Welcome to a special edition of Keep It Local, a podcast of the Local Media Association. A year ago, about this time, we launched this podcast with the idea of having informative and important conversations with leaders across the news industry. And we sure did that, but it's also been a lot of fun. So, in celebration of this first full year of Keep It Local, we wanted to put together a retrospective with highlights from the year gone by. But first, a quick reminder of the LMA mission. We are intensely focused on helping local media companies discover new and sustainable business models. Everything we talk about here falls under that umbrella, and that's why I think it's super appropriate that we start this look back with our first ever guest, Shannon Kinney of Dream Local Digital. Shannon and I talked about the value of a branded content program for newsrooms to extend revenue opportunities, and also tell great stories.
It has been around for many, many, many years. In fact, the original soap operas were simply sponsored stories where businesses were taking an opportunity to reach an audience of a particular publication, or in that case, radio show. You're right, a lot of organizations have called it native advertising over the years. Back when I was 17 and working at my local newspaper, we called it advertorial. So it's simply an opportunity for an advertiser to be involved with, in some way, content that resonates with an audience and that they can affiliate their brand with. Totally, I couldn't agree with you more that storytelling is really the best marketing, and the branded content project just helps organizations learn how to do it well in a way that appeals to their advertisers, but also aligns with their values and the relationship that they have with their audience.
Branded content isn't just a sales product. Shannon emphasized that success requires full organizational alignment. Editorial, sales, marketing, and leadership all have to be on the same page. Everyone should understand that branded content, when clearly labeled, can support journalism rather than compete with it.
I think the biggest piece that we start with is helping get alignment internally in their organizations. We opened this news cohort out for applications, and it was primarily either leadership or sales team that was applying. And many of the sales folks were like, I need your help to get everybody else on board, right? Because it really does take a alignment internally about this opportunity. Then we can teach you how to create it and sell it all day long. But you need the editorial team to not only embrace it, but understand it. It's not trying to be journalism, but content around travel or wellness or local business stories is also appealing to an audience. And so we need to get alignment that this is not something that is shoved onto the bottom and the back of a website. It also deserves highlighting, and the revenue and traffic that it brings support sustainable journalism. Like, that's really what we're trying to do, is find ways to do that, but also surprise and delight your audience with this really relevant content. So I think internal staff alignment and embracing the opportunity is really step one. And in our cohort, we're going deeper than we've ever gone before, in that rather than just offering product and sales training and pitching, we're also going deep in go-to-market, right? And there's several options for fulfillment. Branded Content Project has resources that are available to a market, or they can do it internally if they happen to have resources. Many organizations don't right now. And we talk about pros and cons and different options for outsourcing. And there are several options there. So wherever they are, we can meet them where they are and help them create a high impact, high margin business that also surprises and delights their audience.
All right, let's dive in to what proved to be the most popular topic of the year: artificial intelligence, AI. I got the honor of talking to a newsroom leader who doesn't just lead on the topic, she was an early innovator and practitioner in the world of AI. It's Paris Brown, the publisher of the Baltimore Times. She told me, I use it as a personal assistant every day. She uses it for everything from drafting and editing to helping her manage project timelines. But in this clip from Keep It Local, Paris talks about a very, very important use case for AI that is tightly aligned with her community. You were a digital innovator of the year largely because of your early adoption of AI. And you have described, I'm quoting you, you've described AI as your friend and not a threat. And I completely agree. I've been in journalism for 30 years. I completely agree. But this is pretty different than how a lot of folks in local media see it. Can you talk about your AI philosophy, how you got there, and how you're using AI at the Baltimore Times?
Sure. So, what really drives our AI philosophy, I believe, is need. As a small publisher, we have many jobs, we have less resources than our counterparts. And when I say fewer resources, I'm talking human, I'm talking financial, and I am talking tech. So I begin to look at these free AI models and how they can help different aspects of our business where we had those gaps and then we lack those resources that I mentioned.
So you're not just producing content, you're serving the community. You've used AI to make your health coverage more accessible, letting readers pick avatars and voices to narrate stories. Why was that important for your audience? And what kind of feedback have you received? Also, was this a difficult thing to do?
Um, I think first I want to say nothing is difficult with a partner, and our approach to a lot of things that we have done is partnership. When you have a small staff of 3 or 5 people, a lot of our writers are contract, and then we have contract employees, and so it, you know collaboration becomes the key to success in what you're able to do. And so when we look at the AI in health coverage, I go back to this. It was really part of meeting a need. And so when we approached it, we approached it meeting a need and thought, here's a tool on the market that we can help meet a need. Even how that got started, the Baltimore Times for 40 years, we've built trust in our community. For 30 years, we've been in the health space. And so one of the things that was really important to us as we look at it and how we actually ended up creating in partnership with our technology company, this whole AI around, and it really started around health. We were at a community of center and all the brochures are wrapped up. And we were like, well, why are they wrapped up? And they're like, well, some people can't read. And we thought, why should they be at a disadvantage and not know this information? And I'm speaking of a reality that if you were to Google it and see what literacy rates are nationwide, that you would be challenged. And sometimes they're just language barriers. How about that? We speak a different language. And so we thought, let's create a technology that not only reads or creates a summary, but does it in our voice. We spent 40 years building trust, 30 in the health space, and we wanted to maintain that trust. And whether you know it or not, African Americans, there, the story around health testing, health experimentation, and we sit in the backyard of a Henrietta Lacks right here in Baltimore. And so we were really careful of not compromising our trust, and we wanted voices that spoke to them the way we would speak to them, right? And maintain that trust. That's why that was important. And then choosing what avatar you wanted to speak to you. And having that flexibility we thought was very important. Yes, it does allow for extension of audience, right? But more importantly, the reason behind why we are such a um, staunch reporter around health, it is one of our foundational pillars, is we want our community, the Baltimore Times itself, not only do we do positive stories, but everything that we do in terms of our values, whether it's a story, whether it's an event, it's around supporting the well-being of our community. And health is one of those issues and areas that we cover every single week in the Baltimore Times, and we've done so for 30 years. So we encourage people to take accountability for their health. And this was just another tool or way we saw us being able to do that for our community.
We're going to stay in the AI space for a bit as we move on to some technology available to newsrooms created by a newsroom with the ethics of journalism in mind. Quick story, I got the chance to meet Jon Rust at an LMA event 7 or 8 years ago, and I've been a fan of Rust Communications ever since. That's why I was really tickled to talk to Jon and to show Rust and Michael Mashia about their new AI CMS product called Puben.ai. This isn't a tool developed by a tech outfit that knows nothing about journalism. No, this is a tool designed by tech-minded journalists for newsrooms, as Jon put it, quote, with the ethics of journalism in mind. Let's hear from Jon and then from Show Rust.
Our people are having fun with it. That's the thing. You can't really, it's just such a better system that morale is up around it. Um, we've got senior reporters. We also do something in writing where they can actually score a story. So we use AI. We use some strategy out of Sweden on how you look at content of stories, relevancy, topicality, entertainment, passion. Also, there are a number of different issues. Um, and they get a score, and they love experimenting with this. And then they're also using this tool for follow-up questions, follow-up stories, preparation for interviews. There's so much built into it, and it's built with AI that is tuned to the ethics of journalism. It's not where people are using other systems out there. And I don't know if you want to talk about that show of what you've done around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we think it's so important that the future of AI is really kind of grounded in the communities and the local newsrooms and different things like that. And then just like when you hire someone to work within your newsroom, it's really important that the AI understands where it's working. This is a publication. This is a newsroom. These are our style guide rules. This is our history. This is what we're all about. This is our community. This is who we care for. And then on top of that layer, we also have an area for grounding it into the archives too. So the AI has access to the archive. So it can go back and then reporters in the back end can ask things like, hey, have we written about this person before? And it's actually like, oh, cool. Yeah, actually the star athlete, their mother from 15 years ago that we wrote a story on, this story right here, was also a star athlete. You might want to mention that in the article. So the grounding of the AI, of course, as Jon said, in journalism, but also in your content, in your community, is critical. And that also surfaces for the reader as well, where the reader can come to the website and then ask about, hey, how's the local university? What kind of programs do they do? And it'll bring up actual articles. It's not linking to Wikipedia and different things like that. It's linking to your content. So as people get used to utilizing these AI chatbots, oftentimes they're unhappy with it because it's not grounded in that community. But we're able to meet that gap, and then that also means that hopefully a lot of those subscribers that are currently subscribing to those AI tools will come and subscribe to the newsroom instead. Because how smart is an AI if it's not grounded in your community? If it doesn't know about the business that opened across the street and is just linking to who knows what it is, where you can actually click into it and actually see the article, see the author, see the citations behind the ideas that it's sharing is really important.
Speaking of people I've known for a while, I recently interviewed Ethan Holland, Vice President of Draper Digital Media, about a project of his. You have to know, the people you meet across the media landscape as part of LMA is truly impressive, as is this project. Ethan has publicly documented pretty much everything happening in the AI space. Posts published to ethanbholland.com. I highly encourage you, if you're interested in AI, learning about it more, to start making his website a regular visit. Ethan's biggest message to newsrooms about AI is to go beyond a, quote, chatbot mentality and to infuse context into your prompting. One of the most common mistakes Ethan sees is treating AI primarily as a writing tool. He argues that AI's greatest value lies in helping journalists process information more efficiently. That includes summarizing long documents, analyzing audio and video, and helping reporters make sense of large amounts of data. Let's hear from Ethan.
The LLM is a good sort of segue to my answer because I think Using AI as a chatbot is probably a little bit dated. I think I'd like to redefine AI as not just being chit chat or conversation or a writing tool, but more as a multimodal, audio, video, image understanding tool. So the ability of AI to digest lots of information and then concisely tell you what it's about as a partner is a really great opportunity to save time. So whether or not newsrooms are using that specifically, I think that the ability to give AI a lot of data and have it talk to you about it is an incredible skill. And moving away from just chat to audio, visual understanding, less about outputting content and being a writing tool, which I think is a stereotype, and more about being like a wingman or an assistant to help you digest quite a bit of information and help you process it.
Ethan's research into AI goes much deeper, and he introduced me to a couple of concepts I'd never heard of before: segmenting and depthing.
I'm old enough to have said that I used Adobe Photoshop before there were layers. So there was no such thing as a mask, which is hard to believe. And I remember the mask concept confused me when it first came out because the idea of multiple layers was just so cool. Um, but a lot of things like that are now, there's no moat. Knowing how to use a technology and mask something used to be a manual effort. And I was proud of myself that I could do that. Now you just click a button and it selects objects. And that's something else I would add to the list of things that wow me right now. It's a discipline of AI called segmentation, and that's when you are able to select an object and then track it. And then the corresponding term would be depthing. So if you were able to outline me and you as the two people on this podcast, that would be segmenting us. But if you were able to outline my pictures in the background and your banner in the background and your lamp, and then have a color code of how far away each one was from the camera, like a heat map. That would be called depthing. And segmentation and depthing are one of the most cool technologies. Obviously, in sports, it allows you to track a hockey player, but you can now interact with things in plain language. So I could say, select the picture behind Ryan with the white mat, and it will do it. So you're not even using your mouse anymore. You're just selecting objects. And I think if you're in the sports business or in the real estate business, or even in just, you want to find data centers, you're in the investigative journalism business, you could say, I want to look at the sat pictures and show me any object that's a certain size that looks square, like it's a data center. And it can just mine this data and then give you pictures. Or show me all the pools in this aerial photo. It'll highlight every pool, and you can actually talk to it. So I think people, if I had to think of something that not a lot of people think about, I would say the two terms would be segmentation and depthing. And the tools, if you just want to find them, would be Meta has Segment Anything, which is a really strong tool. ByteDance has one. And then there's a newer model called Kimmy Moonshot. And Moonshot, it's a great name. Moonshot has a really great segmentation tool as well. And they're all open source. So you could download them and play with them.
Like you probably are, I'm still spreading my wings in the world of AI. I'd encourage everybody to go back and watch or listen to this full episode with Ethan. Keep It Local can be found wherever you get your podcasts, and this video version of the podcast does live on YouTube, on the Local Media Association YouTube page. Local Media Association offers a variety of advertising opportunities for you to market your product and or service to the vast local media industry. Our membership is comprised of more than 3,000 local media companies of every size and medium. We have a variety of ways to get you in front of key decision makers within the industry. For example, the Keep It Local podcast sponsorship package. Keep It Local is a trusted local media podcast reaching engaged listeners who care about community, business, and local impact. Hosted by me, my name is Ryan Welton, for Local Media Association. Keep It Local is a podcast about smart ideas, sustainable innovation, and the people doing the real work to keep local journalism thriving. Whether you're a publisher, an editor, ad director, or a community advocate, this show is for you. And on the Local Media website, we have a number of different packages that will fit your needs. I'll put a link in the description below, and I thank you for listening and watching Keep It Local. One of the biggest conversations about AI across newsrooms nationwide is trust. A new national survey funded by Walton Family Foundation and conducted by Local Media Association with the help of Trusting News offers one of the clearest answers yet, and it comes directly from engaged local news consumers. The findings were unpacked on a 2025 episode of Keep It Local featuring John M. Humanick, Chief Strategy and Operations Officer for Local Media Association, and Lynn Walsh, Assistant Director of Trusting News. Well, as news consumers, at the end of the day, it's all about trust and how they feel about the content that they're looking at. What were some basic takeaways from the survey as to what they think about newsrooms that use AI? What level of transparency was required? Does it automatically eliminate newsrooms that use AI from the conversation?
I would say, Ryan, that's a great question because what it really is about is the conversations that newsrooms are having about this emerging technology, about the perceptions of their audiences, and about can it really create efficiencies that will allow them to have more time to cover local news. And the other part that I think was really essential was for them to understand the workflows that they have in their news operations and to determine, is there an AI tool that would improve a workflow? And what we found, which was really terrific, what we found was that they had a really great opportunity to do two things. One, have a terrific conversation inside their news operations, and two, to really understand their workflows and understand how they went about their day to day and what opportunities AI tools could give them. So that was the part where I think has been, okay, let's start by understanding where the benefits are, but let's really have an understanding that this is going to be a relationship we have with the technology, but also with the community and the audiences that they serve. So my takeaway on that one was the fact that this is a relationship between the news operations and their audiences.
There are really good use cases for AI in the journalistic process. And I think there are reasons we should be experimenting with it. There are reasons to try out this technology from the standpoint of maybe efficiency and avoiding duplication, right? And our data and research reinforced that um, the public is okay with some uses. Checking spelling and grammar, that's an example of something they're more comfortable with. They're more comfortable with language translation. Now, we see, though, that they are less comfortable and very ugly when it comes to AI just wholly creating content, right? And so the goal of this data and really why it's so useful is it can help, as John said, guide newsrooms through the decision process of how much should we lean into this? And if we lean in too much, the concern is, are we going to lose that trust of our audience? And then kind of just some general notes about comfort level of AI, I would say, from this group and its use in news. We really did find that many are still unsure about how they feel about um, journalists and newsrooms using AI. And what's interesting is we found that actually more people are uncomfortable than comfortable with AI being used in news, even if it is guided and verified before publication. But they said that more people were likely to say that they would support its use if it could lead to more content, again, with that responsible ethical use, and if it would be something that would allow to free up journalists to do more in-depth reporting. So people are cautiously open to it, I would say. One thing that was interesting with this data in particular is we had almost a third of the people responded in when we asked this question in different ways, who said they were unsure about how they felt about AI use in news. And I point that out because I think that's a real opportunity for newsrooms and for journalists to be open and explore this use of the technology with their community and potentially build more trust and bring them to that comfort level, right? Increase that comfort level and be comfortable instead of being uncomfortable and losing trust.
You've probably heard me say that Local Media Association is intensely focused on helping local media companies discover new and sustainable business models. I mentioned it at the top of this retrospective podcast. Our Keep It Local episode with Bethany Lane of Q City Metro was a reminder that we all need to do better in, quote, making the ask. Bethany talked about Q City Metro's 16th anniversary drive, featuring honest, humorous videos with past staff and loyal donors bluntly asking viewers, hey, why aren't you donating? The campaign culminated in a birthday party exclusively for supporters. It not only raised critical funds, but solidified a sense of ownership among readers. Let's hear from Bethany.
When I started in 2020, I think we had maybe 100 or so active donors. And to be honest, we didn't really prioritize the program or our current donors at all until maybe like 2022-ish. We started really getting into like, okay, how can we build this program up? And so from there it was a really big learning curve. Obviously, most of my time had been spent focusing on like advertising sales. On like, give you money, I'll give you an ad. Versus this, we're just asking for straight money. So I think me and my team really had to like overcome that hurdle of like the awkward feeling of saying like, hey, can you give us money? Like help support us. So I think that was like the first year or so, just like figuring out how to ask, when to ask, and like finding the balance between like being annoying and also saying like we need y'all's help or in order to stay here. Like we know obviously by our numbers and our readership base that they enjoy the content we make, but we sort of also realized that a lot of people who are our readers didn't realize that local journalism needed funding. They just thought it was like cheap, easy. I don't know. They just didn't realize that there was funding that we needed. So I think that was a hurdle for us. But I think our very last campaign that we did was this past November through January, and it sort of celebrated our 16th anniversary of Q City Metro. So we sort of went into it with a really big idea of doing a video campaign. So we started off with like 10 videos, and we interviewed like past Q City Metro employees, and as well as like people donors who read our news every day. And we just started asking like, what do you guys love about Q City Metro? What makes you give every month? And me and my team also did some like fun videos of like, asking people like, why aren't you donating yet? Like, did you forget? Did your credit card get lost? Like, why aren't you donating? And just sort of like being very obvious and upfront about our ask. And so that was a really fun series. We just spent 2 days in the studio doing the videos, writing out the scripts, everything like that. Then we had a video editor who did an amazing job making them look pretty. Then we scheduled them out over about 8-week campaign. And then at the end, we also had a birthday party, and only people who donated were invited. So it was just super fun, and we got a lot of engagement from that, and it ended up pretty well. We got over $10,000 in donations throughout that period.
Wow. What a terrific marketing activation that had real impact. 2 of our more recent podcasts also focused on ways for newsrooms to generate more revenue. Julie Foley from Upland 2nd Street taught us that best of community content is valuable, both in terms of new campaign revenue and, more important, in terms of relationships. But these types of campaigns are not just one-offs. For decades, newspapers have run best of or readers' choice programs highlighting top restaurants, dentists, DJs, and local businesses. But Foley argues broadcast stations have advantages print outlets often don't.
Broadcast is really uniquely positioned to run successful best of programs, but we shouldn't let the print folks have all the fun and all the revenue. And there's room for broadcast, whether that's television or radio, in this best of space, because you can make it uniquely your own. Like, for instance, in Savannah, Connect Savannah is a print publication that does a best of. It's an alternative publication. But there's also 3 or 4 other best of programs that run in Savannah that do really, really well. So there's no reason why broadcast can't get in with it into a best of program, especially when you have the reach daily, you have those strong on-air personalities, you have the social engagement, really do have a handle on social, more so than I think some of our print products do, and a built-in promotional inventory, both digitally, over the top, or CTV, whatever you want to call it, and of course in your core products too.
Right. Hey, something you mentioned there really struck me. You said some of these markets have multiple best ofs. So if you're a broadcast station, particularly maybe in a smaller market, if you see that your local newspaper already is dominant with the best of, that doesn't mean that you can't cut into that segment there.
Correct. Again, I say just do it as well, because you can make it bigger, you can make it better, and you can make it your own. And that's really the key, is finding your personality when it comes to your best of program. I love when I see radio stations do this, especially because they're, and of course the alternative weeklies and radio kind of have the same types of categories, because you can get kind of fun with it. Like in Savannah, it can be the cleanest bar bathroom, which if you're in Savannah and you're visiting Savannah and you're not sure and you're there and you're, having some libations, it's important to know that you shouldn't go right to some of these restrooms. That there's better options, maybe in Plant Riverside District, on the other end of River Street, the new end of River Street. You wouldn't know that unless you had that category. But you can really, again, use your personality of your brand to make it your own. And why should the print publication have the local revenue, all of that, when it comes to this program, or the advertiser relationships that are deepened, or the first party and zero party data that they're collecting when they're doing a program like this? The newsletter opt-ins alone is a reason to do this for your daily news, your breaking news, your weather news, and the ongoing engagement that you can drive with a program like this.
One really important note from Julie. This shouldn't be treated like a 1-month special section, she said. It's a multi-month revenue initiative, and it needs to be big enough to matter. And then there was David Arkin of David Arkin Consulting, talking about the opportunity newsrooms have today with Reels, better known as short-form video on social platforms. Beyond the branding and audience opportunities organically, David explains that there is revenue to be had. These platforms that have rich messaging services, it allows them to keep their anonymity, as opposed to just, it might be sensitive to them, but they can message it to you. And on Instagram in particular, that's a superpower. Now, let's talk about monetization. Newsrooms are searching for a plethora of ways to heighten sustainability. Is it mostly revenue from the platforms themselves? Is it any better than it used to be? Or is it something that's done in concert with the sales department?
Yeah, I'd say it's both. I'd say that definitely the meta monetization is much better than it used to be. There's very specific things you have to do to sort of get that. You do need to do video, but you got to get things into stories and follow their community. There's like a whole thing you got to, and the setting up is sort of like you do need to be kind of a rocket scientist, it feels like, on how to like set these up in the business manager. But we do have a service that we do actually have a rocket scientist on our team who actually has been helping people do this today. So I would say that was definitely a thing, and you need to get engagement and do all those things to kind of get that turned on. The one that I think is like the probably bigger opportunity would be doing a few things around like on direct sales. So branded content, I would say 50 to 60% of the branded content we create today all has a reel that goes with it. In some cases, it's basically a repackaging of what's in that story, like the 3 things to know about this. We use some imagery from that, or maybe get some B-roll from the advertiser's website and sort of use it. Other cases are where like it might be like a top schools like product, like best private schools, and we go out and we get basically a few clips about that private school, and they tell their story a little bit in a reel to kind of pair with like a direct reel listing or kind of like something else. Other cases, we're sort of seeing people doing some answer engine optimization around this, is like selling a branded content product. So they're actually, and they're using their expertise to answer any questions that they know their audience has, and they're using like the video product to be able to sort of do that. The one though that I think is kind of interesting is well, I think all those are interesting, but this is kind of a fun one. It's kind of evolving, are standalone reels connected to attractions. So like right now with like spring break, like clients of ours are going to like spring break attractions, whether it's like a resort or a water park, an amusement park, and they're basically building like a, hey, 5 things to know if you kind of take your family to Six Flags this summer, or this spring break, and they kind of show you 5 different images or 5 different videos that are aligned with that. So it has no other content with it. It's a real specific thing. And so some people ask, well, like, why can't Six Flags just do that themselves? And they could sort of use a paid budget to get it out. But the value that a media company offers is that little like logo button that carries with that video. Even in the paid campaign, your branding kind of carries with it. And if your brand, which I imagine the people listening to this does carry weight in markets, that they're in that kind of camp, that's a huge opportunity to be able to say, yeah, you could do it on your own, but like we're building trust for your business by you carrying your message along with our brand as this kind of goes out in some sort of like paid campaigns. Those are the things that I sort of see, kind of working right now on the monetization side.
Hey there, just a reminder, if you would like to be a guest on this podcast, Keep It Local, you can reach out to me anytime at ryan.welton@localmedia.org. And if you can't reach me, definitely message Lindy Estes at lindy.estes@localmedia.org. And this applies whether you want to be a guest on Keep It Local or sponsor this podcast. That conversation with David coincided with an LMII report still available on localmedia.org for you to purchase. Links will be included in the description below. I've talked with David Arkin twice since the start of the Keep It Local podcast, and I've also talked with Todd Handy of Disruptive Impact twice, both occasions corresponding to LMII reports, including this one about zero and first-party data. Before Todd explained the value of both, he explained the hierarchy of data. For years, third-party data has served as the backbone of digital advertising, but regulatory shifts, including GDPR and expanding state-level privacy laws, are reshaping how audience targeting works. Handy explained the hierarchy as thus. Zero-party data, that's information audiences intentionally and explicitly share. Newsletter preferences, zip code, topic interests, purchase intent. You got first-party data, behavioral signals observed across owned properties, reads, clicks, email opens, return frequency. You got second-party data, a partner's first-party data shared directly, and third-party, aggregated brokered data, increasingly limited and less reliable. Let's hear from Todd now about how this impacts trust, and believe me, it does. And not only does this make the audience more valuable to the newsroom, it makes the newsroom more valuable to the audience because you're able to segment, you're able to see what they want and really parse that in the content you create.
Very true.
How does this play into audience trust? We're doing a project at Local Media Association for a future newsletter where I'm asking folks sort of their projections for the next year. And I know we're into February, but still, we've got a lot of months to go. And one of the topics that comes up is audience trust. Trust is everything in 2026. How does a zero and first party data strategy play into audience trust?
Yeah, so you said it. Trust is everything. It is the whole ballgame. Zero-party data only works when there's an obvious value exchange there, right? So to me, there are three rules. You need to be clear, you need to be minimal, and you need to give control. So clear, you need to tell people why you're asking for what you're asking for. Minimal, you need to ask for the smallest thing that improves their experiences. Don't ask for everything. And control, you need to make it easy for them to adjust preferences and to opt out. So a good example is something like choose the topics you care about so we can only send what's relevant, or share your zip code with us so we can personalize local alerts. A bad example would be collecting a whole bunch of fields of data with no explanation and not really doing anything with them once you've collected them, right? So for me, if you can't explain why you're collecting it in one sentence, don't collect it.
It was my pleasure to interview both Todd and David twice in the first year of this podcast associated with these LMII reports, both of which can be purchased from the Local Media website. Links in the description. But if you're an LMA member who also subscribes to these reports, of course, you'd be getting them for free. Okay, let's end this look back with a couple of huge success stories. The first one comes from LMA's News is Out collaborative. The LGBTQ plus media mapping project is giving queer journalism something it's never had before, a living, breathing record of who's telling the stories and where they're being told. Let's hear from Dana Pickley, the managing director of News is Out. News is Out recently announcing the LGBTQ plus media mapping project. So Dana, what sparked the idea for this project and why is it so important to have this kind of map and research for LGBTQ plus media?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that this would not be possible without the support of the MacArthur Foundation, Local Media Foundation, and the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY. So we're very grateful for the support of those folks and those organizations. So really, what sparked the idea this is the brainchild of Tracy Bain, the co-founder of the Windy City Times and a founding member of News is Out. She was really inspired to collect this information because it hadn't really been gathered before, even though we have 100+ year history Queer media is often underfunded and underdocumented. Mainstream journalism overlooks queer communities, so queer media filled that gap. But there had been really no comprehensive national record. So News is Out, the collaborative that I helped lead, we recognize that in order to help the wider ecosystem and ask funders and advertisers to invest in us, we needed to show who we are, where we are. We wanted to meet people halfway with solid data and a living map, which is another really exciting part of this. And this project, thanks to Tracy, who really put her heart and soul into this. This is a year-long plus project. It was born out of urgency where, we're dealing with rising political threats, corporate pushback on DEI advertising, but there's also a surge of audiences looking for trustworthy LGBTQ plus news.
Dana also explained some of the challenges in LGBTQ plus media that this project uncovered.
Yes, there are several. And to be clear, the entire journalism media ecosystem is dealing with similar issues, but uh, the report really breaks it down into several pieces. So precarious business models. Nearly half of the outlets that we surveyed are operating on less than $100,000 a year, and many are run by volunteers or maybe one or two staff members. So that makes it really difficult to sustain original reporting. There's also an over-reliance on advertising. Most of the outlets that we talk to depend heavily, if not exclusively, on advertising. But advertising revenues drop sharply. Corporations are pulling back on LGBTQ plus and DEI marketing, not because the audience is valuable, but because of this political backlash. There's also been a lack of philanthropic support overall. So unlike other areas of journalism, very few LGBTQ plus media outlets have a foundation of philanthropic funding. That means they're missing a key revenue stream at a time when local news everywhere is dealing with crisis, right? There's also capacity and staffing shortages, sort of like I talked about earlier. But a lot of these outlets don't have full-time staffs, let alone sales teams or even basic resources for legal fundraising, ad selling. It's just not sustainable. And then another huge part of this is geographic news deserts. We have huge portions of the country, 18 states completely, that don't have any LGBTQ plus outlets, publication, media at all. So like Wyoming, North Dakota, Mississippi. And even if you do have a queer outlet in your state, you may be in a completely different part of the state. So there's millions of LGBTQ plus people who don't have any real access to the community that media creates. And then we're also dealing with fear and political pressure. So journalists they're worried, they're concerned. There have been reports of reporters and sources asking to have their names removed from stories. Outlets have had to scrub their office addresses in order to stop being targeted or avoid being targeted. So it's a lot. We're facing a lot, but there's signs of hope as well.
And I also talked to Ken Doctor and Ashley Harmon with Lookout Local on its 5-year anniversary. Ken took us back to the beginning of this publication to show us just how far it's come.
It's been a remarkable half a decade. We were just celebrating with our members last Wednesday at the local museum. We had more than 200 people. We had toasts by local community leaders. And we had Jamie Garfield, who Ashley and I worked with closely from the beginning, our community and student engagement director, created this incredible timeline. And the timeline just kind of stopped everybody. It stopped everybody at the event and then our staff, and we're putting it up in our conference room. To think where we started in November 2020, it was COVID without vaccine and a lot of fear. We had terrible fires, which consumed almost 1,000 homes in Santa Cruz County earlier that year. And that was the year of a massive protest with BLM following the murder of George Floyd. So that was just like, then we enter, and then we can't even be in the same room together because it's COVID and everybody's afraid you could just die if you touch the wrong thing. And those were our humble beginnings. To think about where we've come in 5 years is amazing, and obviously so needed in the America we live in today. The local news situation arguably is worse today than it was in 2020. with what the chains have done and continued to cut. And there are a couple of hundred news organizations, and we are aligned with many of them. We're in two cohorts with sponsored by the Google News Initiative and the Knight Foundation. We are still learning a lot every day internally and from them, but it's kind of an amazement to think about where this has come, and especially now with the plans we're making about where we want to take it next step.
Also, in that episode, we talked about access to funding and sustainability, but we also talked about the strategic use of content to connect with community. Lookout Local emphasizes strong reporter visibility across platforms, and Ashley Harmon explains how Lookout Local has leveraged short form video and how she was able to get her newsroom involved.
You talked about, though, being where the people are, and that's in person, but that's also where they spend time.
Correct.
Is it mostly just the Meta products, Instagram, Facebook? Are you doing a lot of TikTok? Are there any platforms that people are overlooking?
Ooh, we have not dabbled into TikTok yet. We really should, because we are making a strong focus on short form video. And so that's one of those things we've been slow to. But where we make up for it is that we are really great with our short form video, and we're doing it in a way that's not just like, I don't know.
Why don't you talk a little about the app
Yeah, and
and
our
what the
app
app
and
is?
like where people can kind of think of us as the go-to, right? And so it's like we did develop our own app with Newspack and PugPig. Um, and so being able to be on people's phones and serve them day to day and build that direct relationship, we've seen huge success with it so far, especially since launching out the gate with website, newsletter, and the app for Eugene. Like, it's just how you read Lookout. You read on the app, you're getting your newsletter in the morning of like your daily paper, and then you're reading those stories in the app. And really getting to own that direct relationship with people through the app experience, and then being there, building those like more, I don't know, the short form videos with our correspondence faces on them have just done really well for us to be able to like
Yep.
get people in there. And it's just, you could read the headline, but you just get your synopsis from Max, and it goes a long way.
I ask you a follow-up because I know that there's going to be LMA folks out there who see this, and they're going to have this question. How difficult was it to get some of the journalists to buy into having to be front-facing on these things?
I think,
Crazy little.
and it's so interesting because it's like, we have discussions about it, and I think some people are more keen to try it. And so once you got a couple people to dip their toes in, you're just like, it's not so bad. And it's like, right. And it's like, we have it set up for them where it's as low lift as it could possibly be, right? It's like a standing studio in our conference room right next to me, and you can pop in, and we have the kind of like workflow set up. So it hopefully feels semi-seamless and the people behind it. And it's nerve-wracking, but I think where we can support them through it of like showing the impacts and showing that people want to get to know you as a person, want to see you, and like your face is already across Lookout, or like what's a video form, you know? But it's just building, we have that culture here where people do trust me enough to be like, I will try it for you. I will not feel comfortable maybe the first time, but I will try it, and I'll take your notes and I'll give it a go. Um, and Eugene has been the same thing of like, they're taking their own spin on things, and you have a couple people that are really passionate about it, some not so keen, and it's okay. And so we do it as a team, and we can find our way forward.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this look back at a year filled with conversations about local media, their challenges and successes, and their innovations too. If you're finding us on YouTube, I'd invite you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And if you're listening from your podcast platform of choice, leave us a 5-star review. Believe me, it helps. Until next time, for Local Media Association, I'm Ryan Welton, encouraging you to keep it local.